It's not my personal opinion. What I'm representing, with God's help, is the opinion of very religious Jews around the world, including in Al-Quds in Jerusalem. This movement, the concept of creating a state sovereignty, and what they want to call a Jewish sovereignty, that concept, is a movement that started around 150 years ago. It is a transformation from subservience to God into nationalism. Have a piece of land, to be a nation amongst nations, to be comparable to all the great countries. And that came around 2,000 years ago. The Romans and the Greeks, they came, they invaded the Holy Land, and the Jews were driven from the land as a nation. Once that happened, we were put under a decree of exile. And so for 2,000 years, we're under a decree of exile by the Almighty, meaning that we are told by the Almighty that it is His will that we should not be this sovereign nation. We should be loyal citizens in every country we're residing, and we should not attempt to return en masse as a large group of people, or try to recreate even one small 1 inch, 1 centimeter of a Jewish sovereignty, because it is like medicine from God to break our haughtiness. That's what we believe. So there is actually we were put under 3 oaths, and that King Solomon, who built the temple, wrote a book of prophecies called Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, and he speaks about these 3 oaths that God put us under. One is that we should not return en masse to the Holy Land once we were dispersed amongst the nations. Secondly, we are not to rebel against any nation. We have to be loyal citizens in every country we reside. A Canadian citizen has to pray for the well-being of the country, even if you're not happy. Or let's say throughout our history, Jews were many times forbidden to buy land, and they were taxed to a much higher degree. Still in all, we have to be loyal citizens and not rebel against that country. Thirdly, we are not to make any attempt to end exile. Why? Because it's because of our sins we are spread out. God is compassionate. Zionism was created by mostly non-religious Jews. It was a nationalist movement of people who estranged themselves from God, from the Torah. They were non-religious. I always like to carry around the picture of the first, this was the Declaration of Independence, the first Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, and they're making a so-called Jewish state, 1948.
Yes.
And so it's Jewish. Supposedly they're doing us, they're returning to God. They're saying it's the end of exile, and not one of them is covering their heads. You know, so you see what the falseness of it. But still in all, the Zionists, they put on a facade and of Judaism. They incorporated religion in order that the world should say, oh, it's a religious thing, we have to support them. The evangelistic Christians and the millions and millions support them. Jews who don't know the Torah well, unfortunately, the more non-religious, and they say, oh, and they have this emotional playing, that, oh, we're returning 2,000 years, we're in exile. We have a rabbi, we had in the 1920s, the chief rabbi of the religious community that was living there for hundreds of years was Rabbi Sonnenfeld. And he met with the king of Transjordan in 1920s, that's way before the state, to declare our loyalty and that we don't want to stay. He passed on. In 1947, 1948, the chief rabbi was Rabbi Dushinsky. The Zionists then were turning out to be very successful in having the United Nations, through Britain, to get recognized. So Rabbi Sonnenfeld, Rabbi Dushinsky, of blessed memory, this is the records of the United Nations. In 1947, a declaration before the United Nations, he said, "We furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine." This is the very religious, representing the religious Jewish community, says we don't want a Jewish state. And these people are imposters, the one are doing it. And the history is, when he passed on, we took it next, you can see hundreds of thousands of people in the streets of Jerusalem taking up our next chief rabbi when he passed on. We have hundreds of thousands of Jews living there now under this this God-fearing community that does not recognize the authority of the state of Israel. We have a picture here even, you can see how we used to live together. And we babysat each other's children. We lived in total peace. That is why the very religious around the world, we stand in total support. We hurt, we cry with the Palestinians. We are humiliated because the Zionists took our religion and they're using it as a tool to occupy, to intimidate, to silence other people, because if you speak up against them, you're called anti-Semitic. So we the religious communities, stand in opposition. What could be more, what could be more unacceptable than such a concept when the very religious communities are being oppressed and insisting, we are Jews. My grandparents were killed in Auschwitz. Most of our communities are immigrants from Europe. We died because we were Jews, because we insisted on remaining this religion, our covenant to God. And we did not accept that because we suffered, that therefore we're going to turn around and occupy another people. We suffered, and now we should go sin against God that we gave our lives for by stealing and killing and doing against God's will. And so we're against the Zionism, and we are being oppressed. The ones of the Jewish people who found a home in Palestine and were living there, these immigrants, and they were living there, trying to catch the breath from so much suffering. All of a sudden, they enjoyed being under the authority of the Ottoman Empire. In fact, they demonstrate daily. When they demonstrate and you see children we never carry arms, we're not military, they get beaten. Old men get assassinated, rabbis. It's unbelievable. You can go to our site, NKUSA, and see, and the world is silent. They don't even talk about the fact that Jews daily are demonstrating against the occupation, and it screams to the skies what is happening, the injustice to the Palestinian people and to the Jewish people who are living there, who refuses to accept this authority. And here, this is a picture of a girl behind bars. Every boy and girl who turns 17 becomes a criminal from the religious community because they refuse to serve in the army, in the IDF, which is mandatory military service. How dare they? And on top of that, we have to remember that in this 2,000 years of exile that we've suffered so much because we are Jews. The Jews were burnt at the stake. They tried to forcefully convert Jews by the Crusades, by the Inquisition. And when they were expelled from Spain, from Italy, where did the Jews go? The Muslim lands took in the Jews. They embraced us in every Muslim land. Iran, wherever you would like, Palestine, it was under the Ottoman Empire. They took us in and we flourished in their lands. There was no human rights groups to protect us, yet we flourished. It wasn't necessary human rights. So now for the Zionists to come along and accuse the Muslims of an ingrained hate to Jews, or the Palestinian people, an ingrained hate. How dare they? How repugnant. The Torah requires us to show gratitude for people, and to go and turn that on its head and say, these people wronged us. All of this is the most criminal part of this, the Arab and Muslim and the Palestinian people would call the Nakba.